Okay, we're a couple of days late because of the whole Thanksgiving releasing stuff on Wednesday thing, but we're here now, so all's good.
I had to work 2 doubles, so, I mean, there was no other way to do it.
Even
really.
if you weren't working, I probably would have suggested we just do it today anyway, so...
Well, fair enough.
So, either way, it was going to come to this. But it's good, because we only have 2. And speaking of 2, our first one is going to be Horrible Bosses 2, which... I was kind of surprised that, I mean, I know it's been over 3 years, but I was still relatively surprised that this movie of all movies got a sequel this fast.
Yeah.
Because when it was announced, I was like, oh, okay, that'll be dropped soon. And here it is. In full product.
We've also got Hot Tub Time Machine coming out with a sequel.
Yeah, that's weird. That's 4 years in the making.
Yeah.
This is 3. So, well... It's different now, and in a couple of days you will understand why the plot of this actually gave me hope. But in the meantime, we will stay on here Friday. Instead of now that we've gone through the whole thing where they decided that killing their bosses would be a good idea, and that went the way that played out the way that it did.
Yeah.
We open here, and they have decided to go into work for themselves. They quit their jobs, and now they're decided to make this invention called the shower buddy, which washes your hair and puts shampoo in it at the same time.
It seems kind of ingenious, actually.
And they're on this, morning show with Keegan-Michael Key is there. And then they have a potential buyer for this product. And that is the father-son business team of Christoph Waltz and Chris Pine. And Christoph Waltz is like the really, no bullshit businessman, and Chris Pine is like his, trying to be a hotshot son. And they say, we're gonna manufacture, 100,000 shower buddies?
100,000, yeah.
So they get excited, they get an office, they hire a whole bunch of people, mostly Sudeikis hiring attractive women just because, with no experience. And they manufacture all 100,000 of them, they get them boxed up and ready to go. And then Waltz basically says that they're now not going to distribute them, but instead they're going to steal their idea and make it their own. And they won't get any credit for it. So they devise a plan. Of course, the very first option is murder again.
Yes.
Which is funny. It's really funny to watch Charlie Day get riled up when he talks about murder. And they decide to kidnap Chris Pine and hold him ransom so that Christoph Waltz will pay them a large sum of money, and things do not go as expected.
No.
What I immediately liked about this movie was the change in plot.
Yeah.
Because my big criticism of the last movie was it should have been a really, really dark comedy given the setup that it had.
Yeah.
But it didn't really play that up, so it felt like the comedy the movie had didn't match the setup. But here, since they've toned it down now, the comedy feels a lot more fitting.
Yes.
This is definitely a comedy much more suited for a failed kidnapping plan. Kidnapping, I guess.
Yes.
I wouldn't think Sudeikis' character would be that dumb, but he absolutely insists through the whole movie that it's kidnapping. So, regardless, the 3 main characters are back with Jason Bateman, Jason Sudeikis, and Charlie Day. I will say, I thought they were all funnier here than in the last one as well. Sudeikis is definitely, at the top of his game here.
Oh, yeah.
He's probably the funniest character in the movie this time around. Now, the thing about it, I know there's a lot of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fans, but I feel I should put this out as a disclaimer anyway.
Mm.
I thought Charlie Day was hilarious in this. I thought he was hilarious in the last one, and he's often hilarious in general. But this is one of those movies where if you don't like Charlie Day or you're kind of on the fence about him, this might be a little too much.
I can see that.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but I could totally see if somebody would think that, because his character can get really out of control sometimes. Like I said, he so much as says the word murder and writes it on the whiteboard, and it's just doing this thing.
Permanent marker, of course.
Yes. And that kind of thing normally gets to me immediately. So I think it says something about Charlie Day and his performance that I actually found that funny instead of the other direction.
Yeah.
But I think he has a big enough fan base where I think most people won't mind. People who can't get enough of his weird gruff mouse voice, if you will. I don't know how to describe it, but
that works fine for me.
Now we have our returning characters, obviously. As you know, I was probably very excited about.
Yes.
The remaining alive ones. Jennifer Aniston comes back and has a whole different, her character is not different by any means, but her place in the plot is different. Spacey's kind of doing Hannibal Lecter now. He's giving advice from behind the prison walls. And he only has 2 scenes, but in true Spacey fashion, he makes the most out of it.
Yes.
And of course, the return of Motherfucker Jones. I did think it was really funny that, I don't know how many people have noticed the reunion here, that Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz are in the same movie again. I was hoping they'd have a scene together, but they don't. So, yes, I did think this one was... I mean, I do like the first one. It sounds like I don't when I say this, but I think this one is like a big improvement, which really says something because when you make it... Here, I don't remember the first one doing, like, that much box office.
I don't
remember it being that popular. But the fact that a comedy can get a sequel made this quickly, and it actually surpasses the other one, is something that's rare nowadays. Like, this really could have been just some manufactured, oh, by the way, here's a rehash of every single thing we did in the first one, be happy with it. But the callbacks here, there didn't feel like that many.
No.
And when they were there, they felt fitting. It didn't feel like they were slacking at all. Like they do one of them was they overhear Chris Pine say the line, he'd bend her over and show her the 50 states. And then Sudeikis immediately turns to Bateman and says, I told you that was a say! Coming back from the scene in Colin Farrell's house in the first movie. Spacey's house, because it was when he saw the picture of Julie Bowen.
Yep.
The toothbrush thing comes back, which is funny because Sudeikis breaks the fourth wall in the gag reel again.
Yep.
So yeah, they're there, but everything feels fitting, and it really does kind of take a different approach. Like what the tagline made me laugh when I saw it, and I forget what it is now. I think it was like different bosses, same tools or something. Because tool across Colin Farrell's face on the original poster was hilarious.
Yes.
But yeah, it's funny consistently throughout. There's a reference to Speed that I thought was funny.
That was also really funny.
New characters. We also have Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad as the cop that is kind of gets involved in what's going on here. I did like the return of Motherfucker Jones. He's pretty much doing the same thing, but it's not old.
No.
They never call him out again for being Dean, but I guess that's okay. It's worth noting, I was a huge fan. Jamie Foxx does his white guy voice in this at one point. And there's a whole, reference to 9 to 5, which is funny now, because I was trying to do that whole versus distribution thing.
Yep.
Where Jamie Foxx points out the obvious that we never bothered to think of before, that Jason Bateman is clearly the Jane Fonda in this situation. But the thing about it is, another problem with comedies lately is how cheap they feel. This one felt like it had real production in it. One scene really stands out, where they do kind of the Gambit thing. It's in a lot of movies, but that's the first one that comes to mind now. Where they talk about their plan for the big money drop for the climax. And we see this play out in this really slick, cool fashion, like it's from like a serious movie. And it's really elaborate, and the scene is really, really well put together. And of course we learn that that is their vision of how it's supposed to go, and then the climax is how it actually goes. But I thought that little segment just really stood out. Yeah, and so the whole thing is really well put together, and it's actually it has a lot going for it because they got, all the cast members back, with the exception of the dead ones from the first one. And they brought in, great new faces. But even so, it kind of felt like it could have been a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of amazing that it turned out the way that it did. Because not only is it funny throughout, and it does everything right, but I go as far as to call it a legitimately good movie, too.
Yeah.
The setup and, how it goes in those directions you're not quite expecting. All of it plays out really well. I love the running thing where it seems like anytime something is about to get far-fetched, or they're going to take an idea maybe farther than they should, it always gets shut down immediately. Or they play it up in the more realistic way that it would go. So yes, there is a moment where Motherfucker Jones goes to ram a locked gate, and that doesn't quite go as planned, to say the least. The car chase is brilliant in itself. So yeah, there's a whole lot to like about this movie. I don't know what kind of reaction it's been getting. Probably a mild one. But I'm a fan of it.
Yeah,
it's one of the better comedies of the year for sure.
And given the fact we're almost in December now.
Yeah. The really good comedies aren't, exactly something that just grow on trees, but
no.
I'd say this is one of them. And it's not just my bias that, Christoph Waltz and Jamie Foxx have reunited in the same movie that Kevin Spacey happens to be in.
Yeah, I know.
This was just made for me.
It really was.
But yeah, aside from all that, I am a fan. And I love Keegan-Michael Key, so I love seeing him just pop up in random cameos like that.
Agreed.
Also, if you're a Human Giant fan,
yes,
there's a post-credit scene with Rob Hubel that you'll probably like.
I love that.
Okay, so that's what we have here. The positive reviews never go that long.
No.
Speaking of things that are a bit shocking and that they're better than they should have been.
Yeah.
Our next movie is The Penguins of Madagascar. I don't think it technically has the in there, but it makes me feel better if I say it.
I think it
it's
makes
one of those
more
cases,
sense.
Yeah.
The Penguins of Madagascar doesn't make any sense.
Okay, well, so what this is I was wondering what it was, whether it was after or before or what exactly. Because I didn't really know much about this at all, except that we're kind of having this trend now where we make what seems to be useless spin-offs with the sidekick characters of popular movies. This and Minions have been paired together since pretty much the beginning of time. Everybody's kind of grouping them together. If the Minions is as funny as this, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, same here.
As much as I do like those characters in their own, confined to their own movie. But this seemed a little more appropriate in retrospect because I remember when the first Madagascar came out in 2005 or 2006.
Yeah.
Nobody really liked it. And everybody kind of, at least in our group, I don't know what, mass people thought about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was alright. I thought the American Beauty joke really stood out, but then again, it's DreamWorks. But anyway, and the Castaway joke where he has the ball Spalding. But regardless of that, when Madagascar came out, all the people that didn't like it said they did like the Penguins. And all the people that liked it said I liked the movie, but I love the Penguins. So this is actually kind of I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner.
Yeah, it's true.
It really, legitimately could have happened after the first movie.
Yeah.
Given the instant popularity they had. So it actually is before and after. We start when they're really little and they're with their family and stuff like that. and their newest guy, the dumb one, Private, I think was his name. I couldn't keep up with their names really.
Yeah, same here.
They find his egg rolling away, so they chase after him, and he hatches. But the problem is that they chased him so much as they're away from the whole clan now. So it's just the 4 of them, and that's how their adventures begin. We cut right to the very end of the 3rd movie at the circus with the fireworks going off, and that's where this one starts. And there's a really funny joke where they, well, not really funny, the really funny one was back, I forgot to talk about it, but a clever joke here is, they're parachuting down and the fireworks are going off and the big title comes up. And then there's a cut from behind and we see them kind of floating down to the ground and you can still see the title fading out behind them in reverse. No, the really funny joke at the beginning was, and I don't know how many people are going to catch it that would see this movie in theaters. But there's a joke that because they're penguins out in their natural environment, they're constantly followed around by documentary crews. And sure enough, they pan out and there's just a sound guy and a narrator. And the big in-joke here is that... Now, it's kind of a half in-joke because you would think that March of the Penguins was one of his movies when it wasn't.
Yep.
But because he is he's most famous for his documentaries and just his voice as a narrator in general. The voice of the narrator of the documentary is Werner Herzog. I don't know how they scored that, but the thing about it is, the one thing that kind of bothered me, I know I'm being nitpicky here, but since he is a famous documentarian, and he was playing a documentarian, why not animate the guy to at least look like him?
Yeah.
The guy did not look like Werner Herzog at all, he just had his voice.
That's true.
So that was odd, and kind of struck me for a while, but I got over it. And then our plot continues, and the penguins eventually meet. They're abducted by a vending machine, and the vending machine is actually controlled by our villain. And our villain is, he kind of reminds me of a character out of Dexter's Laboratory. But then we see that that's a disguise. And he takes off his human disguise, and he is actually a giant octopus named Dave. And it's worth noting, I gotta say this real quick, because I don't know if this was there's so many references in this movie. I don't know if this was a direct reference, or if it was just their own joke and they didn't know about it. But the big joke in this movie is that he is the big villain, and his name is Dave. Every time they called him by name, I found it hilarious. It never got old.
No, it didn't. Agreed.
There is an old Anthony Mann Western starring Jimmy Stewart called The Man from Laramie. A really serious Western, and a really great one, too. And the villain's name in that movie is Dave. And it's not, meant for comedy. It's a really serious movie.
Yeah.
And there is this scene that has been just engraved in my brain forever, where Jimmy Stewart is finally going to confront him, and there's this big scene where the music swells, and he's down at the other end of the road, and Jimmy Stewart just charges angrily at him all the way down the road, and just as he reaches him, in full fury, he just screams, "Dave!" and then attacks him. And I always thought that was hilarious.
Well, yeah.
Because the fucking guy's name's Dave. I don't know if that was a reference here, or if it was just kind of a coincidence, but yes, a villain named Dave is funny, especially when it's a giant octopus voiced by John Malkovich.
No lie.
Who is hilarious in this. His voice work is perfect.
I've been waiting for him in an animated movie for a long time.
Oh, I know it's happened before, but I can't think off the top of my head. I believe it was a lower tier one. Now, the thing about that and how great Malkovich's voice work is also falling in line with Cumberbatch is in this movie as well. And Cumberbatch's character is this wolf that's kind of like this hotshot special forces person team. And I feel like those characters, I don't know how funny this movie would have been without them. Because this is one of those cases where it actually benefits the movie, because it makes it funnier when you know in the sound booth behind this wolf and this octopus are Benedict Cumberbatch and John Malkovich.
The picture I saw on IMDb is priceless.
And for, like, extreme Cumberbatch fans, I know you're out there. There was a video that went viral where Cumberbatch was on Graham Norton talking about how he can't pronounce penguins. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot say the word penguins correctly. Because he was doing voiceover for this documentary and couldn't say it right. He kept saying it penguins or something like that. It's hard to imitate his mispronunciation of it. I don't know if he was going along with the joke on himself or what, but throughout the entire movie, his character mispronounces penguins as penguins is how he says it. Like there's 2 G's in there. So that's interesting. And, you know, he has a little funny scene where obviously, you know, he's a wolf that's been trying to track down Dave. And we see, like, his wall of work. And there's, like, a sheep that's circled in red, and it says, "This is definitely our guy." When they realize it's Dave, he's like, "Oh, I guess I can just throw this away then." I thought that was funny. It's worth noting we did not see this in 3D, which I think is better. But there are a couple of cases where that kind of stood out. I don't know how many people saw Life of Pi in theaters in 3D or not. Regardless, I guess it doesn't matter. Apparently, this movie was adopting the Life of Pi thing, where when something was going to be like really, really, really 3-dimensional and look really good in 3D, it would go farther into widescreen, and you'd see the black bars come down. That happens twice in this, at the beginning and at the end. For a while, I couldn't tell if it was like a joke or not. I can't tell. There are so many times in this movie where I can't tell if something's a joke or not. Because it's got a whole jokey atmosphere through the whole thing, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because the movie's actually funny, believe it or not.
Yep. Blew my mind too.
Like there's just references out the ass. So there's this running joke with Dave. Can't do it. I can't say his name without laughing.
No one can. Don't feel bad. Continue.
His appearance helps nothing.
He looks like he's from Monsters vs. Aliens.
I particularly love the moment when he first reveals himself, because he also wears a brown wig.
Yeah.
And when he first tears off his disguise, he's the big purple octopus and the wig stays. And just how proudly he says his name. Dave! And then I love the really, really stoic moment Cumberbatch has at the end. And once this plan falls into place, we can capture Dave! So I really love Cumberbatch's work here too. And his voice work is really funny too. I particularly love the moment where he's under the impression that they're about to die. And he's the one that has his head on straight, and he's the one saying, you know, everything is serious and we must do this seriously. The moment where he's just repeatedly screaming, "We're dead," into the other guy's ear. Yeah, there's a lot of things in this movie that are really, really funny, which I can't believe.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was saying was, the running joke with Dave is that he makes puns throughout the entire movie with actors' names.
Oh my god.
Let me give you a few examples. Because there's so many by the end. He says like so many all at once there at the end. It just kind of has this joke has an orgasm at the end of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they just do a bunch of them at once. There is, because it's the name of one of his henchmen, and then the task that they have to do. For instance, Nicholas, cage them up. There is, Elijah, would you take them away? There is Robin, write this down. There's one where they switch it up a little bit. There's 2 different ones named Drew and Carrie.
Yeah.
And then they just have a whole barrage of them. There's Howley, bury them. There's, Kevin, bake on. We need our victory cake. There was William, hurt them. I didn't catch the Charlize one. Like, what did that flow into? They're on something.
Charlize thereon. And Drew Barrymore was in there too.
I didn't catch her.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
that's another one.
It's worth noting that there's a cameo in this movie by King Julian, and I was waiting for him for the whole movie too, but I was waiting for him for a whole different reason.
Yes.
And then I was disappointed. They couldn't get Sacha Baron Cohen to come back and do him. So King Julian's now just some... We had this commercial for some spin-off show he has now.
On Netflix.
I guess they're like, hey, since we're, obviously we can't do this with Sacha Baron Cohen, let's go ahead and, while we have this guy, let's give him a little more money to have a cameo here so we don't have to pay Sacha Baron Cohen however much money.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this isn't like, I don't know that I would call this like, a good movie or anything. Oh, there's a couple more movie references in there. There's an Empire Strikes Back reference where he's being taken away and he's calling to the girl, but instead of saying that he loves her, he just says, "I know." A clear Empire reference. There's a moment where they think one of the penguins has blown up, and somebody says to Dave, "You maniac, you blew him up." Of course, children of the audience, you can't say the rest of the line. You totally could. The movie's PG, but they didn't go for it. That would have been kind of great, though. But, whatever. But yeah, I can't say it's like a good movie or anything, but it's really, really funny, and I think that's all it needs to be. Because there's some stuff in there, where the movie kind of plays up that it's not necessarily trying to be smart or anything.
No.
Which you can't fault it for because it's just one of those movies. One particular moment that stood out in my head is that during one of the rescue missions, there is a moment where the penguins probably inadvertently kill an entire plane full of people.
Yeah.
Because they're falling out of the sky, and they're trying to break their falls with passing planes. And when they reach one plane, they go completely through it and put holes in it. But there's no danger here. Nobody's, freaking out that there's 3 holes in the plane in the ceiling. And then they go out, the door, and the door is just left open. And, the movie just goes on. We keep following them. And I was just kept thinking, wow, that entire plane of people is so dead right now.
Yeah, easily.
But it's not that kind of movie, so no need to worry. Though it would have been funny if they went the extra dark distance if they were going to do that. But, it's fine. I will say I was almost kind of expecting, this is totally, off, and there's really not much reason I had to think of this, but it was just a thought that went through my head I can go ahead and mention here before I end this review. I kind of thought for some reason there was going to be a Scrat cameo in this.
It could have been.
Because it's a movie about the breakout character, which is something Scrat hasn't had. He only has the shorts and his little bookend scenes. I didn't realize that this isn't just DreamWorks. 20th Century Fox worked with it. And they're the ones that do Ice Age.
Yeah.
And obviously when the movie starts, because they're penguins, we're in an icy landscape. I'm not faulting it, I'm just saying, and it probably would have, I don't even know if that would have worked, but it's just something that went through my head. That would really not surprise me at all if he was in this movie. But that was not the case, so you don't have to worry about it. So yes, both movies did their jobs today, and that was great. Both really funny movies from beginning to end, and it was nice. So, yes. Completely different. Almost hilarious how completely different these two are.
Yeah.
Yes, this, The Penguins of Madagascar does not have a scene where Jennifer Aniston talks about eating pussy, but it still managed to survive nonetheless.
Yes.
Okay.
So as always, since now we're doing a star rating system, so we're going to start with Horrible Bosses 2.
I'd actually take it to 3.
Yeah, I'm with you in there, actually. And The Penguins of Madagascar.
2.5.
Okay.
You could do 2.5 upward is a recommendation, and remember it's out of 4, not out of 5, which is a common misconception.
You could do worse this weekend. Honestly. Yeah. Really worse this weekend. See the previous week's videos.
Because there's these two out now, and then there's still Mockingjay.
Yep. So
of the 3 movies that will probably be seen this weekend, you really can't go wrong.
No, which is something we can't not say very often.
Yeah.
So we got a surprise for you guys. Since it is Black Friday, we're going to be doing a twofer. So Oscar fans, get ready, because Whiplash, Birdman, and The Theory of Everything is coming at you in just a little bit. So we are going to be filming our November prediction video for the Academy Awards. That's going to be done, and that's going to be up tomorrow. Brand new verses on Sunday, which corresponds with the movie that was talked about just a few minutes ago. And also, we're going to be talking about the Independent Spirit Awards. So that's going to be all coming up this weekend on Pop. So, AJ, any parting words?
That's it.